Hello, Kevin and Abrie. Welcome to the Payment Show.
Good afternoon, Tyrone. How are you?
Very well, thanks. I was enjoying the weather just now. I just walked back home to do this show, making the most of the British summer while it lasts.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what the weather was like where you were, but yesterday we had this like crazy torrential downpour of rain, like sort of tropical for about maybe 3/4 of an hour, and then back to sunshine.
Where are you based?
So we're based. Well, I'm as in speaking for Fumo here in the UK. So we're based up in Milton Keynes.
Okay.
Great location, either to get into London or for access to the UK. But it's our home here in what is a relatively new city. But trying to make our mark as one of the new fintech capitals of the UK. So,
is it really? I didn't know that.
No, I mean, I think I've got some work to do. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But and I'm out there championing the cause. So.
Well, I won't be visiting you anytime soon because every time I've been to Milton Keynes, I get lost in the boulevards and grid system over there. It's very unusual for the UK.
No, absolutely. Well, you'll be pleased to know if you do ever come up to visit, come on the train. If you come at the train station, there's a brand new, actually Santander's HQ, literally being developed right adjacent to the front of the station, and we're going to be taking some space in there. So dead easy. Great. Make sure you don't get lost on your next trip up. So.
Good stuff. Well, today's the first day I've got both of the co-founders of a company on the show. So thanks for your intro, Kevin, and welcome, Abrie. And where are you joining us from today?
Yeah, so I'm joining you from Cape Town, South Africa.
Okay.
We're a bit of a global company, although, the UK is our current focus. So good to be on the
Excellent.
show.
Well, I'm familiar with Cape Town. I used to work at AWS and a support centre, major support centres there. And for those that don't know, the EC2 was developed in Cape Town, from memory.
Yes.
If anyone's using the virtual servers out there. So thanks for your intros and really appreciate having both of you on. And I wanted to kick straight into it. So you're both co-founders of Fumopay, which is a payment solution that enables account-to-account transactions using open banking. And at a high level, Fumopay provides faster, cheaper and safer alternatives to traditional card payments for businesses and obviously the end consumers. So I think it would be great to start off by talking about open banking at a very high level. I believe it started off in the UK and it's expanded to several countries or maybe more, including Australia where I used to live. But I believe it all started in the UK. So if you could maybe give us a bit of background there and just explain the state of open banking in the UK and maybe elsewhere in the world.
So this is quite an interesting one because it actually didn't start in the UK. We were having a look the other day on the origins of open banking. Now, it actually started in the 80s in Germany. That's where the idea was formed. But it wasn't until, I think it's 2010, when the PSD2 was, the European Parliament essentially brought that into fruition. And at that stage, obviously, the UK was still part of the EU. So where the UK actually leads in this process is they were the first country to mandate their banks to follow the open banking standards. And then after Brexit, there was a slight change between, so the EU is using the PSD2, which stands for the Payment Service Directive version 2, and the open banking entity covered the UK then, and that's kind of where we're at now.
Okay, great. And I don't know whether you know much about other countries that open banking is available in. Maybe you could share some of that before we dig into the solution.
Yeah, sure. I guess it's a global initiative, although I guess each geography or region is adopting at a slightly different pace. Obviously, you mentioned Australia. Again, a forward-thinking territory when it comes to banking services. And equally, there is, I guess, the early signs of looking at delivering open banking following Joe Biden's announcement within the US territory. But, certainly what we found from our experience, particularly in the sort of UK and European market, there's great appetite, particularly in Europe. So UK, I think, has always been, fair to say, been seen as the sort of leading territory in terms of, as Abrie mentioned, mandating and then just growth. I think we have that ability to commit to an initiative and demonstrate how we can bring that to market. Certainly within Europe, What's interesting for those of us that worked in payments for some time, sort of bank transfers is not necessarily anything new. So people that have worked with Sofort or Ideal, there's been other APMs that have been available in Europe for many, many years and other payment methods. But yeah, it's definitely, I think for us, looking at how this now comes together where, we can have the ability to do international direct bank payments from any territory will be super exciting. But yeah, I would say UK definitely leading the way. Some superb milestones. I think it was somewhere in the region of 1 billion API calls, 5 million open banking payments, and I think up to around 7 million users. So yeah, definitely leading the initiative for sure.
Yeah. So I'd like to move on to the sort of social foundations of your solution. I didn't know in my prep notes that, thanks for mentioning it. How did you guys come about and how did that happen?
Yeah, so I guess the idea, we started looking at open banking back in 2018 as we mentioned, the initiative was sort of being formed, and really wanted to look at, could this new way of offering banking and payment services, how could it bring real value to, consumers and businesses in the UK market? And actually where the initial concept came from, so I have 3 sons. One was at university, one was on his way to university, and the other one had, still at sixth form, not really sure which direction. But one thing that became very clear from my son at university is they were constantly borrowing money. Now, not borrowing money from the bank of mum and dad, but also borrowing money from friends within their group. And some of these amounts of money were quite small, 50 pence, £1 here and there. And then they would, maybe get a little bit embarrassed and then go and chase up that money. But ultimately, every small amount has an impact over a period of time, whether they can afford to eat or go out, do various things. So our first approach to launching Fumo was looking at it from a social element. So we built and launched our social app, which was a free to use app. And it was really about, proving the concept that open banking worked and seeing that payment mechanism where a group of people could request or split money between each other. They could do that immediate transfer of payment, but also had a record. So importantly for us, it was the ability to record those payments as even as a cash payment. Cash is obviously its demise, but sometimes people would pay somebody back in cash form, and the ability to track that. So yeah, we actually started in that social space. And it's super exciting. We learned a lot from that. It was really useful in terms of the whole user journey and user experience. But yeah, something that was really the foundation of Fumo.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few friends payment apps and sort of split sharing apps over the years, and a lot of them are fantastic. It's just the problem that everyone's got to be on the same app, otherwise you don't get any critical mass. And I think PayPal's sort of generally fulfilled that role, perhaps.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we looked at that whole bill splitting or sharing space. Obviously, a lot of it is still card driven. That was one of the challenges. And I think where our approach was to provide something that was bank agnostic. So the feedback that we always would receive was, well, I can split a bill with my mates on Monzo. But that's great if you're all on Monzo. And we had, various feedback where, a group of students would move into a house. They'd all try and apply for a Monzo account. 3 out of the 5 got accepted, 2 didn't. And effectively they were still in the same issue. But yeah, absolutely right. I think it was really proving the point that it's, it can be really a bank agnostic, nice, simple way of being able to send, or receive a payment. And it's, as I say, was really the foundation of starting our Fumo journey. Yeah.
Well, the solution has a lot of benefits for businesses. So, I'll summarize those. Immediate payments being a big one. Businesses can sign up in under a minute. 0% card fraud and chargeback risk. 70% lower fees. And businesses are able to use a phone to take a payment. So, and Xero integration, which we'll get into later, which is quite important for your solution. So there's a whole bunch of benefits there for businesses, especially cutting out that 2.75% charge. It's a big one. So I'm going to let you talk about that, but throw out a sort of counter argument from the consumer side. and I fall into this camp. I love paying with account-to-account payments, with a retailer I trust and who offers the option. But if it's a new retailer, I will always use a credit card. So it would be good for you to chat about the thoughts around that and how that might impact adoption.
Yeah, certainly. I think what we've experienced, there's still a huge education piece of work for on the consumer side for sure. So, I often am out at events and exhibitions where we're talking to customers, and I think, whilst everyone a high percentage of people have the bank app on their phone, they're still often confused by the term, account to account or, pay by bank or faster payment, and really understanding what that mechanism means for them. But yeah, I think you're right. It really varies. When it's a sort of an in-person or scanning a QR code, they are, typically physically with that retailer or service provider. So it does make sense. I think where we see greater adoption is within a mobile checkout experience. So maybe where, customers looking to purchase something, they want a fast, easy mechanism to be able to do that, and maybe less concerned at that point around the secure element. But if I'm honest, we don't. The feedback we get is they don't use it not thinking about security. It's more that they haven't yet been educated in what either pay by bank is or why I should, select that option at checkout, so to speak. But it is a key topic that equally needs to be addressed. How do you build that consumer confidence, or continue to build that consumer confidence, as you say, when maybe paying a merchant they haven't traded with before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've personally, the only account-to-account payments I've made is literally with a bank account and sort code here, or in Australia using either account details or bill pay, which they have over there.
Yeah.
But I haven't used, say, some solution like yours, like in the UK. So in terms of the mechanics of it, let's say I go to a retailer that has your solution. What do I literally see? So I go to checkout. What do I see there? A text box that says pay by bank, and then it just takes me through a wizard that links into one of my banking apps? Or how does the exact mechanics work?
Yeah, sure. And it's always great to see a demo. I think, once you see that user journey on the consumer side. But in essence, at the point that you either select pay by bank, and in fact, just on that topic, we've adopted pay by bank because we feel that it's most intuitive to the end consumer. I think there is always the challenge that if you present multiple, alternative payment methods at checkout and they are unclear, faster payments, what does that mean? I believe there actually was a payment service provider either called FastPay or Faster Payments. Is it still a card payment? But yeah, the typically the experience should be you click pay by bank, and then you're really directed to choose your bank. So you're wanting to pick the bank app that's on your phone, and once you pick that bank app and authorize to pay, your bank app will then automatically open up on your phone. And then it will ask you to authenticate and authorize the payment. And, that mechanism is really controlled by the individual banks themselves. So if I'm on Revolut, for example, it's really simple. I have two-factor authentication, so I have to Face ID twice, but I only have to click approve that payment. With Starling that we use, again, slightly different mechanism, but it's typically a fast. The feedback we always get is, wow, that was quick, that was easy. Didn't have to do anything. So yeah, what we found is once someone's experienced it the first time, they actually quite like that journey. In fact, I slightly digress, but was asked today about how would you compare that to Apple Pay, and it's a similar experience. But what you're finding these days is even with card payments, you're having to either go and do a second step authentication with your bank app typically. So yeah, we think the user journey is pretty slick. It's always great to see in a live payment environment, but yeah, it's fairly frictionless.
Great. You've got some good case studies as well. Childsy and Shampoodle. I guess that's a pet related one. Did you want to perhaps talk about those?
Yeah, it's different. What we've aimed to build at Fumo is what we would call a multi-channel payment platform. Given our background, not just in payments, but particularly e-com and digital, we understand that there are multiple use cases that can benefit. So the two case studies are very different. So if I think of Chelsea as an example, they're a new startup business looking for a payment option to improve their own cash flow in getting their invoices paid. So what they were able to do was leverage our Xero integration. So when we say Xero integration, I should say for the listeners, this is Xero as in the accounting software. Not
I should have made that clear. Thank you.
There is Xero integration, because in some cases there are. But so we entered a relatively new partnership with Xero. And what we love about the Xero integration and the opportunity there for small businesses is that if they select our pay by bank option, and which gets automatically presented when an invoice is generated, there's little reason for the customer to put off paying that invoice. Now, if I send an invoice without pay by bank, and particularly if it's the first time I'm paying that invoice, I've now got to go and set you up as a payee. That process is becoming slightly elongated these days as banks look to confirm the pay ID information. But once I've set you up as a payee, I've then got to go in to pay you and make that payment. And particularly if you are, a mobile user, that invoice has been presented to you on your phone, it's quite a bit of friction and time, and people will then delay. So what Chelsea were able to benefit from was having the Fumopay integration in Xero. When they send that invoice to their customer, and the customer can open that on their phone, they go through exactly the same checkout process as we spoke about on ecom. They pick their bank, they authorize the payment, no need to set up the pay or enter any card details. Chelsea get an immediate settlement in their account, they got instant cash flow, Xero is reconciled to update that invoice, and they pay much lower fees. So it's we're really here to try and champion those SME businesses, and it's a really nice use case of how they, as a new business, haven't had to go through take out a merchant account with the payment service provider for card payments, and they can take instant payments. Shampoodle is a completely different example, but one we actually really love. So they actually selected Fumo for exactly the same reason as Chelsea, to get their invoices paid. But actually their core business, as the name suggests, is dog grooming. And so small, female founder business looking to set up in a local town, and again needed a way of taking payments from her customers, once they come in to collect their animals. And really had some struggles to try and get a card payment provider. I think they had an account with SumUp and then with Square, and for various reasons had a number of challenges, either with the terminals or just the actual mechanism to take payments. So I was asked to see if we could help. So I actually jumped in the car, popped over to Shampoodle, and got her to install the app. And effectively, we've created what we call a business app. So it's almost like a replacement for a card reader that you can have on your phone. And she installed the app there and then. I sent her a quick payment to demonstrate that it worked. And I think that day, took 8 payments in the first day. So it was a real, demonstrating that there's some great innovation through the whole open banking community that can actually has a genuine impact on the livelihood of a small business or an individual. And that's why we like that. Not the biggest, but actually the use case we felt really echoes certainly what we believe is important to us and the community around open banking.
Yeah. Thinking out loud, one assumption I have, tell me if it's correct or not. If people are using pay by bank, do you think they might be more financially well off? Because if people are using credit cards and delaying payments, etc., that might be because they're on slightly lower incomes. I know that's completely throwing out there, because there's lots of wealthy people with credit cards, but I'm just saying in general, what do you find?
I think, I don't think it's typical of your financial status. I think a lot of it is around ease of use. We find it's just the ability. People like to spend as little time as possible doing the things that that they'll find frustrating. Paying for something is one of them. People don't like necessarily going into their bank app Let's face it. It's not. You only do it generally because you've got a task, and therefore, what we found is, if you've got 50p in your account, but you've got to pay for something that's 25 pence, you can do it quickly using your bank app. I think using a card, bearing in mind, it is in some respects a pseudo direct debit payment, because ultimately it's coming out, it's checking that you've got money in your bank account, and it's taking the money directly out of your account. So I think it varies on the scenario. If somebody is in a position where they are having to use credit cards for whatever reason to help manage their own cash flow, I think they're going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
For us, it's about ease of use. It's just what we find is, it's certainly in physical retail, most people in the checkout are sat there on their phone. They're doing something on their device.
Scrolling Instagram, most people.
Exactly. And then if that means, a couple of face IDs or a fingerprint, and I've paid something and I haven't had to do anything else. In fact, what we're going to do one day is time it from maybe either an equivalent Apple Pay or Google Pay checkout, and equally getting my debit card out of my wallet, or a lady getting out of its purse. We'll do a little competition to see how much time we can save. But
that'd be good.
I think so.
Well, given that Facebook and Google spend millions changing the shade of a color on a checkout screen or an ad or something, definitely an experiment worth doing, I think. Yeah, but thanks. Yeah, that was just an assumption I threw out there with no hypothesis at all, just wondering whether cash is king with wealthier customers. Okay. So I wanted to sort of ask where you guys fit in the grand scheme of things, because open banking is this platform, all the banks are plugged into it, which then enables companies like yours to offer solutions on like a layer on top. So I wanted to understand what's unique about your solution, or the advantages that you have over others, perhaps.
Where do we stand out? When we initially thought through this, I think Kevin would have answered this one, but it's maybe the approach that we have to the market here is it's not necessarily that we only go after the SME space, and that's the people that we want to enable. It almost comes back to the mantra we had around the social app when we started that. We want to enable people to do business easier, and the SME space is the people and businesses that don't get looked after. So for us, we try to lower the fees. We'll probably talk a bit about the Xero integration later, but we're able sometimes, for certain credit card providers, if they take payments via the credit card provider, they might only get the money like 7 to 30 days later, because there's one, and then they can't consolidate the information. But with us, the customer gets paid immediately, and we will maybe then just take our invoices at the end of the month. But we just try to make it easier for them to get money into their accounts quicker and at lower fees. So
you're not just killing the 3%, but getting the money now.
Yeah, and that's the way we try to differentiate ourselves, is maybe not, the big guys who's got a long roadmap, but it's the small guys that, they need to be enabled, and they're the backbone of the economy, aren't they?
Yeah, I think we took the initiative from the start that we wanted to have control of the platform, to be able to adapt and support change quickly, and that's why we've developed our payment platform in-house. It's fully developed, owned, and it just allows us to then connect directly with businesses, and I guess equally support those that maybe have got some interesting use cases or are relying heavily on sort of legacy payment processing, that actually a technology like open banking could really help evolve and innovate their own business. And I think being able to sort of talk to those organisations, share our approach and our technology, I think is hopefully really beneficial, and demonstrates that we're there to listen and help organisations. So, effectively we do sort of straddle. It's quite interesting. There's the market we find is split between pure sort of API service layer providers, and maybe those that are actually delivering a front end application, and we offer both really. We built the platform to be able to allow merchants that they could white label it. For example, they may want to build a solution that involves, a payment process, and to build the confidence with their consumers, it would make more sense if they, had it branded as their own, payment offer. We like those discussions. But yeah, equally demonstrating that there's just not one use case. There are so many use cases in the market, and therefore let's demonstrate how a platform like Fumo can be adaptable, support, react, and I think demonstrate, as Abrie mentioned, that we can move quickly for those customers, and therefore allow them to take the benefits. And that's really it. It's about us, being able to forward those benefits on to our customers and equally pass them on to their own consumers.
Yeah. One thing I always like to ask, which is a big premise of the show, which is increasing sales conversions and revenue. I mean, you had a great example there with Shampoodle, 8 transactions in the first day or so. Do you have any stats around how this affects sales conversions at checkout or other scenarios?
It's a good question. I think we've, I guess, focused less on the pure e-com conversion piece. Partly because I think it feels like everyone wants that piece of that pie. That if they get in the checkout first, and we obviously understand our core SME market, and we're trying to support that across multiple channels. So it's hard to sit here and give you a direct conversion, say of an online or sort of e-com retailer. Typically what we find, or what we would recommend, is there has to be, maybe some incentive. Why? So, playing devil's advocate, I as a consumer, if I didn't know who Pay by Bank were, or what that banking solution, what benefits it could bring me, then why would I select that at the checkout? So what we have seen is, merchants looking at how they can, influence that decision to reap those benefits. So that could be the fact that you can do a paperless receipt. It could be that you could assign loyalty or rewards. One that we really like is the instant refund. So, I'm always a big advocate that if I've sent my goods back and they've been receipted by the retailer, why do I still have to wait 7 to X days?
Totally agree with that.
So I think this is, I guess how we want to support retailers. It doesn't just have to be about the checkout. It's actually that overall experience, that if you can package that correctly, then I think you can start to drive some good statistics around conversion. But in those scenarios, we know that if we put a QR code up in a where there's a queue of people queuing up to buy beers, and there's only 2 PDQ machines to take payments, but they can just scan their QR code and then take their beer and go, we know we're going to have a much higher conversion percentage. So it really is, I think, use case specific, and equally how those users have been incentivized. And I think it's a little bit too early to have any solid data on that. Yeah.
How do people typically find you and engage with you? Because they've got some unique challenge, or are you doing heavy marketing out there?
Yeah, certainly. I think we've many channels. As you know, the SME space is it's over 5 million SMEs in the UK, as well as sole traders and individual traders. So it's a big market to go after. What we like to do is look at specific use cases. So if I take the Xero partnership, for example, we know that we have a very beneficial use case. It's very clear for the merchant. They can see the benefits of that themselves. What's interesting for the SMEs, particularly in the Xero scenarios, it's not just the instant cash flow and the reduction in costs that actually they see as the main benefits. We found out in hindsight that just time to reduce reconciliation of card payments is a huge headache. So what we tend to do is try and look at those individual use cases of how we can connect with that audience and move forward. But moving forward, we're super excited. We recently closed our seed round, and we have an awesome group of investors on board that come from within our industry. And we're keen to look at how we can increase that awareness, education to support our target markets, really. So.
Yeah. congrats on the seed round. I didn't know that. Congratulations. So you're in the UK market, but obviously starting to have international employees. Any plans for expansion, or plenty of work to do here yet, I guess?
Yeah, obviously, I think the main thing is we want to first look at consolidating what we have in the UK market. Now, although this is, we're chatting payments today, but we are a PISP and an AISP. So there's a lot of
So what does that mean?
Yes, let me just. So PISP stands for Payment Initiation Service Provider. So that would be almost what we've discussed so far. Someone we can initiate a payment between two parties. And then the other thing we have is our account information service provider, or information service provider. So many acronyms. And that is more your traditional scraping of transactional data and stuff like that, where one can, for example, you can build customer models or data models around it. So it's more, if you want to learn the behavior of the customer, you would go down that route. So all in all, we've got licenses for both, with the slight focus on the payments at this stage. So we can consolidate a bit more into the market if we want. And then from there, we'll probably move into European market, just because, back to what we said at the start, it's important to have the right maturity in the market right now. So even now, if the US goes and, they've got open banking, it's going to take them 2-3 years to get the right stuff in place. And then, do they force these banks or not? And the infrastructure there is just not as advanced as what you get even down here in Africa, where, you can't clear between banks as easily as the fast payment scheme that we use. And then in Europe, the instant SEPA, I can't remember the name. Instant SEPA. So for us it would be probably Europe, and then maybe Nigeria and Australia, I think, is actually where we would go. So
nice. So the seed funding that you've raised, it's for a mixture of sort of growth, educating customers, and some expansion. What's the main driver for that?
The main focus is really just to accelerate growth now, and build on some of the partnerships that we have, but equally have in the pipeline to develop, to support more merchants, really. So it's just it really is about fueling that growth. As Abrie mentioned, there's so much, it's still an embryonic market in the UK, really, and there's still a lot of work to do there. We really have a mission to be the best in the payment space within the SME sector, and really make sure that if we have an integration with a platform, it can be the best it can be, delivering great user experience for the merchant and the customer. So there's always work there to be done. I think it's too easy sometimes to get distracted and look at other markets. What we will see though from a international payments growth is just the ability to support some of those other payments in. So often with SME merchants, they're asking, can they settle payments outside the UK to other regions? So there'll be some areas there that we will look at for sure. But for the time being, lots of upside in the UK, and we've only just really sort of scratched the surface of that, and therefore keen to now execute on some of our sort of growth targets.
Excellent. So in terms of if a business wants to get started, and before you go into it, your website is fumopay.com, so FUMO.com.
Yep.
On Twitter, you're at Fumopay. And if you could touch on planning, deployment, how long it takes typically, and any of the above.
Yeah, sure. So I guess for a merchant to sign up, we've tried to make the process as fairly seamless as possible. They have two mechanisms in terms of how they can sign up. They can download the app, or they can sign up through our merchant console online. And fairly straightforward process. Once they've submitted their relevant details, they go through KYC process, get authorized, and once they've been authorized an account, they can start leveraging open banking. So they get instant access to their own QR codes. They can customize QR codes. They're given a URL, or customizable URL, if they looking to send a payment link, or they can select the integrations tab and connect to their Xero account. So depending on the use case, a very quick process at the moment, and we're putting some energy into looking at how we can better improve that sign up and adoption for the merchant.
And if I recall correctly, did you say earlier you can white label your solution?
Yeah, so one of our I guess approaches, because we've developed and we have sort of an API approach to the platform, then if there was a brand looking to white label, then we can definitely support that conversation.
Okay, that's quite a big thing to have as a for bigger brands especially, who don't want to take people off platform, which often happens with things like PayPal checkout, which I hate. Hate going off platform. It just breaks your flow sometimes,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, as I say, some exciting opportunities out there. I think, as I say, combining the overall experience that could be leveraged through a pay by bank type mechanism, I think could be pretty exciting. So
yeah. And is there anything that you wanted to get across that I might have missed, which is important?
There's movement and stuff coming in the open banking space that's always very exciting. There's this concept called variable recurring payments.
Okay.
Now, which it's going to be the next, how do you call it, the next buzzword. Well, it is really the next buzzword in open banking, and it's something that excites us, and that we also see in how can we bring that to our customers as well. And the way it works is, at its core, it is much the same as how you would set up a direct debit to a company, like or a utility bill or something, but you will authorize the payment in your bank instead of filling in the form that they need to submit, and then you can set the parameters of these payments that we can then automatically deduct monthly from or weekly from your account, which is quite exciting. Now, this is where the whole point about mandating stuff comes in, which is quite interesting. So not all banks have rolled it out. Some have a lesser version that's called sweeping, but even that is quite interesting. So sweeping means it's still this same type of payment that we just spoke about, but you can move the money between your own accounts. So as long as it's clear that it's the same person that owns all these accounts, provided like ourselves, will be allowed to move money around. And where it gets interesting is, like, let's say a use case could be that a customer sets up, at the end of the month, any money I've got left over in my check account or current account, please put that into a savings account or pay off some loan, and it could just automate those processes as well. So there's all these extra exciting stuff coming, and we're looking quite forward to how we're going to implement that, and actually not even enable our consumers, but also our business customers. So it's
no, that's really important. You said it's exciting, depending on who's listening. I don't think the open banking Christmas party would be. Maybe it's a little bit more exciting than the annual accounting parties.
I think what having spoken to a number of merchants already about this. In fact, the first thing we get asked is, can we offer direct debit service, or is there a recurring or subscription payment offer available? And I think being able to combine that service, as Abrie mentioned, there are so many use cases. The whole direct debit mandate process seems so archaic, these days. Obviously the merchant still waits to take their first payment some time after they've signed up a customer. But I think the more of those services we can bring to help a business, ultimately it's removing some of the friction for the consumer as well. And I think that's the interesting element of our market that we're in. We see all these stats about how many users, but often people aren't aware that they've made an open banking payment, or they've used that service. I think you possibly have seen the stats around HMRC and the amount of revenue that the payments they put through. But most people that have paid there have not sat there and gone, wow, that was a great open banking payment experience. They just used it because just do it because it's quick and it's easy. And I think that's the thing, that the biggest hurdle is education around this. As we always say to our merchants, your customers aren't going to be picking up the phone going, oh, I see you've got an open banking payment option now on my checkout. I'm so excited. I've got to use it. It just, it's
never going to happen.
No, it's just naturally going to evolve where they'll either, and that's what we look at. How do you present that? If they maybe just see their bank icon, is somebody more likely just to go, I want to pay by my bank, I'll just click on that icon. Hey, my app's opened up. Oh, I've Face ID'd. Oh, I've paid. So, yeah, I think...
That's literally the first way that I ever made an account-to-account payment. It was just there as an option.
Yeah. And that's it. It exists in a number of... again, I mentioned HMRC. I believe it's in American Express, for example, if you want to do a payment. It's out there in the market in many, many examples. But from the consumer, they're not seeing it or thinking it's an open banking. And maybe they're not connecting the two. They're not connecting that payment experience to I'm now in store, or I've just, I've come up and I've scanned this QR code here and I've simply paid, albeit underneath at its core, it's the same, payment process.
Great.
But ultimately, that's their job, to get people excited.
Yeah. a very tough job for somebody.
It's a tough crowd, but we're on a mission. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate the conversations around your solution. Are there any events coming up that maybe customers and businesses can meet you at?
Many events. We are planning a number of sort of small business events that we're doing at the moment. In fact, we've just done one recently in our hometown of Milton Keynes, your Business Expo. But yeah, best thing to do is come and check out the website or connect with us on social. Always love to have a chat. Explain. Love to do demos. I think demoing and seeing the payment mechanism work really brings it then home to the merchant, potentially how they can use that environment. But I really appreciate the opportunity of being invited and just sharing some insights to what we're doing here at Fumo and a little bit about the market. So.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see another UK fintech really kicking some goals. Thank you. So let's finish on something fun. What are you guys reading or watching or listening to at the moment? I'm rereading a book. It's called Laughing at Wall Street. How to invest in stocks, picking up on trends, be it TikTok, Twitter, or just social media trends, which often take a while to appear in analysts' radars. So it's quite interesting. How about you guys? Doesn't have to be a book.
Well, if we're going to jump into a TV show that involves money, I'm going to talk about Succession, because that is absolutely fantastic. If anyone has ever seen that, and it's very loosely based upon a very wealthy man, but
I've heard it's Murdoch through the media. Yeah.
Yeah, it's well worth a watch. It gives you an idea of sometimes, maybe what goes on there at the top, where people's got more money than they know what to do with. So that was one I found quite interesting.
It's definitely on my list, actually. Nice.
Yeah, I was also recommended this week. Is it the Bank of Dave?
Oh yeah, that came up on my Netflix recommendations.
Yes, I've got
based on a true story. When I read the blurb.
Yeah, I only found out we were actually somebody at an event came along and was the second person that had spoken to it. So I've got that on my list next to watch. So I think I've got a book. I've just started, Traction by Gino Wickman. If you know that, it's really
I've heard of it.
Scaling. And I think most of my recent books have been looking at either enterprise, businesses that scaled. Alibaba, the house that Jack Ma built was a pretty good read. But I think it's looking at trying to adapt it to a business of our size, and actually how can we really learn from people that have made mistakes as well as had successes. And I guess over the last few years, so many businesses of our size, have either scaled quickly or failed, and it's just trying to learn some lessons from there. So had some good referrals around Traction. So keen to get through that.
Great recommendations there, and good job you didn't start a buy now pay later company, hey?
Well, Yeah, it's funny how that came up very early on in the early days of Fumo, actually, about a student being able to split a bill and repay it back. But yeah, it was almost pre the buy now, pay later surge. But
good stuff. Well, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate the time. All the best in the future for the growth in your business. I'm sure you'll do great. And look forward to meeting you in future at some point.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
and
thanks
really
for having
appreciate
us.
the time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.